You're listening to In Response, a legacy podcast. A show where three handsome guys talk about their favorite Magic the Gathering format, Legacy. This show is brought to you by createness@anycost.com and Austrian-legacy.com. You can support the show at patreon.com/response_legacy. And now, lean back and enjoy.
Hello everyone and welcome to episode 57, the 15 of
In Response,
a legacy podcast.
I'm Philipp Klein
I am Daniel.
And I'm Peter Plank.
and we're talking about legacy.
Most of the time.
Whoa, this time we are back together.
As usual.
Yeah, sometimes things work out really great, and you know what will probably work out really great this weekend? The Austrian Legacy Masters.
You don't say. Is it finally the time that we can sling cards?
Oh yeah, this weekend we will start today with the Legacy warm-up that will get streamed, I think, on 6 p.m. Central European Summertime on twitch.tv/Austrian_Legacy. And tomorrow we have our European Legacy Masters qualifier on 11 a.m. Central European Summertime on twitch.tv/Austrian_Legacy. And to round it all up, also on Sunday, another event. We call it the Legacy Classic, also on 11 a.m.
Perfect.
So, would be great to see you in the chat on Twitch.
Mm-hmm.
And go ahead, Daniel.
Yeah, what I wanted to say is I'm so excited because I actually didn't think it would happen, but we are really fully booked.
Oh my god, this is so insane.
All our seats are taken. We are limited in space, unfortunately, because we only have our small little, well, it's not that small, but we have only our local game store. We don't have an extra location or venue, unfortunately. But for this, we are completely booked.
Actually, and that's why I'm so insanely hyped this time, because the fact that we are 64 people and fully booked means that maybe we can do it bigger next time?
Can be. It's a matter of interest and support, and therefore we need all the support from all guys around Europe or the world even. Come fly to Austria, even from the United States or any other place in the world.
But don't mix it up with Australia. It's Australia.
The flight's also cheaper than to Australia.
So next year, if we do it again, let's make sure that we get a lot more people than that. It would be certainly really, really amazing, so that we can have our own little Austrian GP or Magic Fest, whatever you want to call it, kind of. But only
great.
Legacy, which is the best format, obviously.
Yeah, it would be great. So just follow us on social media to keep you in the loop. Follow us on our podcast, Response_Legacy, and also on the Austrian Legacy League, Austria_Legacy.
And watch the stream.
Tune in, subscribe, and follow us along our journey.
And speaking of sponsoring, we have to thank our Patreons, Christian Neutz, Matt Duncan, and
Moritz
Eichmeier. Thank you very much for supporting the cast and also supporting the Austrian Legacy Masters. So, Peter, you had an idea for an episode.
Yeah, I had a completely new idea how to...
Insane.
It's insane. But I wanted to talk about the
Something
15. No, we were wandering around topics and what can we bring to the cast that can be enjoyable for our listeners. And basically, a big thing when you go to any tournament, and with the Austrian Legacy Masters ahead of us, it's for a lot of us. How do we sideboard? What is a sideboard? And what goes into a sideboard?
It's a good question for some people. What is actually a sideboard? What? I only play Burn. I don't know what to do.
I mean, basically, if you come from a different standpoint, and usually nowadays, if you come from kitchen table or casual play to any 60 card formats, they are not 60 card, they're 75 card formats usually. And now you have a sideboard. And in EDH or something like that, you have to have a lot of flexible cards in your deck that can answer everything. And in Legacy or in any 60 card format, you can put cards that are not really relevant to a lot of the field into the sideboard because you don't need it for every matchup. And then you get to use for game 2 and game 3 your additional cards in there. And I, for myself, constructed a little bit of a table where I categorized the cards that go into the sideboard. It's, if you want to talk about like a conceptual framework of cards that can be put into place to get into the deck. So I, for myself, categorized basically into 3 main groups and 1 small little group, which isn't really that big because it's really only for wish targets and for cards like Imperial Recruit, Recruiter of the Guards, because they're silver bullets that come out from the sideboard. Land, how's it called? Crop Rotation is another card that gets silver bullets out. But the 3 main card types basically for myself are hate cards, interaction cards, and threats that go into the 15 cards.
Yeah, I think overall this is a nice way of establishing, let's say, a general picture of like when you want to tackle a specific format or more specifically a specific meta game, you want to make sure that you know which cards are good against which kind of decks, so you could like categorize all the different decks, and then depending on the function of each cards, assign it a category as you did, and then you can kind of have a little bit of a better overview and what cards you were probably missing against certain matchups, or what kind of cards you actually need against certain decks, for example. And it is sometimes a little bit of an, let's say, a better overview of different decks or meta games in general when you look at like that you did. And I personally like that because it gives you an easy answer, or let's say an easy hint when you for example have your sideboard open, you have 14 slots and you can't figure out the 15 slots. This is oftentimes the case where you think, okay, what actually do I need? Then normally what you do is you go through what kind of matchups you have. I don't know, there's this deck, do I have enough cards against this deck? And there's this deck and whatnot. It is one possibility, but overall you can get lost sometimes into the details, and some people tend to overthink certain situations against different decks, and then you think, okay, I need another surgical against control for extracting their Oro or something like this, you know. I mean, this is one example. And if you would categorize it like that, and then you have say, okay, I have 2 or 3 artifact hate cards, I have 2 or 3 graveyard or combo hate, whatever, and interaction cards, it is a nice way of getting into the direction that you might need. I think it is like to having an overview of the whole format or how you approach sideboarding in general, a good idea.
And here is also one really important aspect is to know your role in the matchups from your deck, because your sideboard slots vary greatly if you're faster or if you play a slower deck. Then suddenly you don't need that much cards for that specific matchup, and then you can shave or have some overlap in your sideboard. So knowing your role with your pace that your deck usually plays out is an important aspect in building your sideboard the right way.
Yeah, for example, I'm a little bit into like creating something for a usual legacy deck, and therefore you have to very differentiate how the deck plays. Is it a tempo deck? Is it a slow control deck? Is it a little bit more of a mid-range deck? Is it a combo deck? Is it a prison deck? The elements of the deck.
Blue?
Is it blue? Is it non-blue? It's very, very different there, because like if you are a combo deck, you don't really have like a lot of interaction with the opponent's board. In a case that you want to create an advantage for yourself, you only want to solve problems most of the time that you can get your combo through. So the cards and the use cases of those cards are very, very different, and therefore the sideboard has to look very, very different.
That's why we see so many strange cards in the sideboards.
Yeah. And sometimes it's even correct when you figure out your whole sideboard that, I often hear when talking to people, when they build the sideboard, when a certain card comes up, or when they look at different deck lists, they think, but this card is only for this matchup. For example, I don't know, let's say you want to have, I don't know, a null rod only for, I don't know, 8-cast or whatever, for example. It just looks rather limiting. Then they would typically think, okay, no, I might swap it out for maybe, I don't know, wear tear or whatever. There's more like
applications for it.
It's more broader. But more often this is actually not correct, because you need to think of what you said, Philipp, is what is your role and what is the strategy of your deck and what is your weak point. And it might be that for a given meta game that you have to face, you only have one weak point that is maybe one specific matchup, and you have to tackle it with one card only for that. And even if this one card is a 4-off in your sideboard, this can be the case. For example, you could be any, I don't know, really strong combo deck that is capable of also maybe grinding, I don't know, and you can maybe have a lot of interaction to beat control decks and also beat aggro decks, but you lose to, I don't know, other combo decks. And the most prominent combo deck is, for example, Reanimator. You jam 4 Leylands just for Reanimator, for example, in the sideboard. This is one example. And for these kind of things, it just makes a lot of sense when you think about it. And this is not so obvious in the first place. But having a little bit of an idea when you look at the different card and think more like, okay, what is like the general category and what is the general purpose of this card would make it more easier in a lot of sense. And therefore you don't lose yourself in distinguishing in all these different cards. Then you have a discussion, should I bring Grafdigger's Cage or Surgical, or should I bring Leyline, or should I bring Ferry Macabre? Yeah, these are all graveyard hits, This is kind of pretty much easy to distinguish. This is, of course, a simple example, but...
Yeah, for example, one thing I want to do with this is like to have like a general idea of a sideboard. So you go over there like, okay, the typical sideboard has like 2 artifact 8 cards, for example. Mm-hmm. Then you go over, okay, I have a new brew, basically, and I want to construct a sideboard for it. So, okay, the usual sideboard for this strategy of my brew has 2 of those cards. So I go in there, okay, I usually want to have 2 of those. So if you start brewing with a deck, you have a general idea how to construct your sideboard with those pieces. You pick out 2 of those, 2 of those. You want to have like 1 additional counterspell, for example, and something like that. So you can have an easier time brewing with your sideboard, because like sideboarding for brews and creating sideboard for brews can usually be hard. And for example, a lot of guys do like I think it's called the elephanting. Yeah, where you go from 120 cards down to your 75. And for a few people, it's easier if you construct your 60 and then just 15 and then adapt at a later point.
That's true. But man, elephanting is also
It's really good,
It's really good,
but it's really hard.
It's hard, yeah. But the general idea is that you have a deck, and then you just construct the best 60 card version that you want to have against each matchup, and then you distinguish what are the overlapping cards and construct your sideboard out of that. That's the idea. But this is a lot of work that I think would be the most beneficial if you would do it like on a real in-depth manner, but it's really hard to do it, especially on a short notice. That, I mean, you have to put in a lot of work, especially. And, you know, Magic is a game of shortcuts. In the end.
That's true.
And rightfully so, I think, because a lot of situations you cannot just evaluate on a spot every time. You have to rely on statistics. You have to rely on heuristics, exactly, and just rely a little bit on shortcuts. On, you know, how would this situation or how would this matchup usually go? One of the best articles for that is, and I want to shame you, Peter, for still haven't read it. Who's the beatdown? I'm really sorry, but this is. I want to do this as long as it takes for you to read it.
It's good that he doesn't know that I haven't read it also.
What?
But
oh my God.
I read the Burn article.
Oh my God! The Burn article, is it the new one?
Yeah.
Yeah. It is good, but it's not as good as the original Who's the Beatdown. It is so fundamental in value. It's like if you have this in mind, it solves like 80% of your questions a lot of the time during gameplay and also for sideboarding.
Okay, yeah.
Because
I haven't made my homework.
Yeah, when you know which position you are against a certain deck. And for this, you have to apply a little bit of knowledge, a little bit of shortcuts or heuristics that you can evaluate. Because sometimes it's not that clear. I don't know, when you're playing against, I don't know, let's say a difficult matchup, Allurin against Cephalid Breakfast. Both are combo decks. How would you rate, who's the beatdown? It's not so easy.
I personally would say it's Breakfast in there. Because
Is the
Breakfast is the lower to the ground deck. It has the lower CMC cards for the combo. So therefore the combo is usually faster in Breakfast executed as in Allurin. Therefore you are the beatdown.
And in that sense, it is the way is how I would think of it is basically think about both decks, how fast they are. Exactly like you said, Breakfast is faster. That is one correct. But how much interaction do both decks have? Who has more interaction? And then who is better in the long term? Who can grind better? Who is better positioned if the game drags out in games?
That's Allurin.
That's Allurin in that case, for sure. So absolutely, I think Breakfast in that sense is the beatdown. And for that, I need grindy cards? Do I need to bring in removal spells that you want to do? Or do I want to just maximize on my combo and protection spells to just win? There you have the answer, and then you know what to sideboard. Then you also know a little bit what to board out. So these fundamentals in hard, combined maybe with your previously done work, that is our topic now for constructing a sideboard, is like really almost half the deal, or almost the complete deal, let's say, for at least preparing or you know, applying or adapting to situations, let's say.
Yeah, and doing the work here really saves also a lot of time in the long run, because doing all this work by yourself really puts it into perspective why you bought it that way, why you bought these cards out and why you bought these cards in, and it saves you from overboarding in a lot of situations, because what I have expected from a lot of players is they bring so many cards in, and oftentimes like you said beforehand, the surgical for the Uro in the 4-color control matchup. If you're fast, if you're fast, then you don't
Care
need the
about-
surgical.
That's a
for the Uro.
very good example. If you are a combo deck and you want to just to combo your opponent out, you would not care about Uro against a control matchup. You just ignore it because you're happy when your opponent uses 3 mana just to gain 3 life and draw a card. I mean, yeah, they ramp, but it is definitely the threat that can win them the game like on a reasonably fast clock, but usually it doesn't matter. You just want to deal with the interaction cards that they have with their forces or their, I don't know, removal spells or whatever they have. Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, and overboarding is probably one of the most done mistakes that I.
Well, it happened to us, unfortunately. I never thought this would happening, but we lost the second half of our recording, unfortunately. It was due to a new computer that I got myself, and unfortunately due to standby and sleeping mode, they completely shut off the recording, and we lost half of that. So really sorry, guys. We cannot continue with the rest of this, but I'm pretty sure we can maybe talk about it in one of our upcoming episodes. And I really hope that you still liked so far the talk that we did on sideboarding. It would be good to know a little bit on what you liked about it and what not, maybe. What we could improve, besides, of course, keeping the recording, but making sure that we entertain you guys as much as possible and have the content that you would like to listen to. So I'm really sorry again for that, but we will do better next time. And this leaves, of course, more time that you can actually tune into the stream that should be happening actually right now for the Austrian Legacy Masters. That is going on the whole weekend. Philipp, myself, and Peter, to a certain extent, will be live streaming the whole event on Twitch. So make sure to check it out. It is Austrian-Legacy, the channel there. And besides that, of course, make sure to follow us on our social media. It is at response_legacy everywhere and all the social medias. And yeah, besides that, I can only say see you next time in Response, the end.
This was In Response, a Legacy podcast. If you enjoyed the ride, feel free to support the show by following, leaving a review, or subscribe on patreon.com/response_legacy.